Hello, everybody. My name is Eric D. Johnson, also on BrightShine, right here in the city of Memphis, in the county, Sheridan State, Tennessee. Today's date, still Sunday morning, September the 15th, 2024, 11:56 a.m. First, I thank my family, my support for your team, encourage support, continue to keep myself employed. Let Memphis Tri-State area continue to further my education, tomorrow, work out on the line, continue to pursue my social studying, being in a straight country. My spending time to bring going to school, and I'm going to go back. In the future, I'm gonna go back to school and first I'm gonna earn my social degree. Then I wanna study and earn another degree. I'm gonna start my Facebook Live. Hello, everybody. My name is Eric D. Johnson, also on BrightShine. I live right here in the city of Memphis, in the county, Sheridan State, Tennessee. Today's date is still Sunday morning, September the 15th, 2024, and time 11:57 a.m. First, I thank my family, my support for your team, encourage support, continue to keep myself employed in the Memphis Tri-State area, and continue to further my education, tomorrow, work out online, continue to pursue my social degree, study, being administrative contract tomorrow. Present time, take a break, go to school. In the future, I'm gonna go back to school and earn my social degree, and I'm gonna continue to study and earn other degree. Like I said, it's still Sunday morning, and let's go ahead and get started. Now, we're over here on BibleStudyTools.com. All available versions of the Holy Bible. Best known translation, for example, Holman Christian Standard Bible, English Standard Version, King James Version, the New American Standard Bible, the New International Version. Then you have the New King James Version of the Holy Bible, the New Living Translation, the New Revised Standard Bible. And then you have other translations like modern translation of the Holy Bible, the Bible in Basic English, Common English Bible, the Complete Jewish Bible. The Good News Translation, the Hebrew Names Version, the Lexham English Bible, the New International Reader's Version, Orthodox Jewish Bible, World English Bible, the Young's Literal Translation. And you have older translations of the Holy Bible, American Standard Version, the Darby Translation, the Dewey Reams Catholic Bible, Revised Standard Version, Tyndale Bible, the Latin Vulgate Bible, the Webster Bible, the Wycliffe Bible. And you have New Testament on it, like what's that, SBL, Greek New Testament, the Wyman New Testament. You have Spanish Bible, Portuguese Bible, French Bible, German Bible, Italian Bible, Dutch Bible, Chinese Bible. All right, let me click back over here. Okay, like I said, we're on BibleStudyTools.com. And we have the Bible verse of the day, and it's on coming from the New International Version. The first book of John, that's New Testament, the 5th chapter, verses 13 through 14. And it reads, verse 13, I write these things to you who believe in the name of the Son of God, so that you may know that you have eternal life. Verse 14, This is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. That was the Bible verse of the day, coming from the first book of John, the 5th chapter, verses 13 to 14. And we also have today's Bible reading coming from the book of John. There's New Testament, chapter 18, verses 1 through 18. We have 2nd Chronicles, that's Old Testament, chapter 26. And the book of Psalms, that's Old Testament, chapter 83. And again, we're coming from BibleStudy2.com. And it was reading from the New International Version of the Holy Bible. Now, I went back and checked myself because I kind of thought I forgot. But when we was on BibleGateway.com, I didn't read the Bible verse of the day. To make sure I don't forget before I read the Bible verses of the day. All right? The Bible versions. We're going to read the verse of the day so I won't forget. We're on BibleGateway.com. And it's a New International Version. Verse of the day coming from the first book of John, chapter 4, verse 16. And it reads, and so we know and rely on the love of God. Excuse me. Let me read that again. And so we know and rely on the love God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them. So again, coming from the New International Version, we on BibleGateway.com, the verse of the day. Coming from the first book of John, we in the New Testament, chapter 4, verse 16. That way I wouldn't forget. All right, now we're going to go to the Bible verse of the day. The Bible versions. From A to Z. The Holy Bible is being translated in various languages all over the world. It's important about the name of God. See, that's the reason why when I do my reading, you talking about BibleStudy2.com, BibleGateway.com, and we're talking about available versions of the Holy Bible. We're talking about Judaism. We're talking about the Catholic Church and all the Catholic churches. Roman Catholic Church, Greek, the Greek Orthodox Church, your Eastern Orthodox churches, your Eastern Orthodox Catholic churches, all your Eastern Orthodox Catholic churches, and all your Oriental Orthodox Catholic churches. And we talking about the versions of the Holy Bible. And just think about the names of God. We talking about Judaism, Catholic Church, as well as Protestant. Then you got all this stuff today talking about some denominational churches and non-denominational churches. For example, the Church of Christ. Talking about there's some non-denominational. Man, okay. Bible languages like Amharic version, New Amharic Standard Version. Then you got, a Musgo Guerrero. And then you have Arabic Bible, easy to read version. And then you have the Kitab El Hayat. Then you have a Wadi Bible, easy to read version. Then there's another Bible, Pivatar Bible, New Indian Bible version. And then you have Bulgarian Bibles, Cibono Bibles, even, your first Native American indigenous people. There's a Cherokee New Testament Bible, Kurdi Sarani Standard Bible, and Occidental Bible, Czech Bible, Welsh and Danish. Then there's German Bible. Then, of course, there's all these English Bibles. Then you have all these Spanish Bibles, Persian, Farsi New Testament, Finnish Bible, French Bible, Greek Bibles, Gujarati Bibles, Hebrew Bible, the Hindi Bible, Croatian Bible. And then you have a Haitian Creole Bible. Was there two of them? Nouveau Testament. Okay. Then you have Hungarian Bibles, Hawaii Pidgin Bible, Icelandic Bible, Italian Bibles, Japanese Bible, Tico Oriental Bible, Ketchi Bible, Korean Bible, Latin Bible, Luganda Bible, Maori Bible, Macedonian Bible, Mam Central and Mam Todo Santos Bible, Low German Bible, Nepali Bible, Nuhati Guerrero Bible, Dutch Bible, Norwegian Bible, Chichewa Bible, Oriya Bible, West Central Oromo Bible, Punjabi Bible, Polish Bible, Papua New White Bible, Portuguese Bible, and Romanian Bible, Russian Bibles, Slavic Bibles, Somali Bible, Albanian Bible, Serbian Bible, Swedish Bible, Swahili Bible, Tamil Bible, Thai Bible, Tagalog Bibles, Twi Bible, Ukrainian Bible, Urdu Bible, Vietnamese Bible, Yoruba Bible, then Chinese Bibles. See, this is serious. You have BibleStudyTool.com, BibleGateway.com, but that don't mean that that's the only source of the Holy Bible. But we online. You got BibleStudyTool.com, BibleGateway.com. There are other sources of the Bible, online as well as offline. Because you got bookstores. The library, of course, has the Holy Bible. And this is worldwide. So you talking about Judaism. You talking about all the Catholic churches, Roman Catholic churches, Eastern Orthodox churches, Oriental Orthodox Catholic churches. Then you talking about all this Protestant. And then you talking about all this denominational and non-denominational. And we talking about, because we're finna go there now. We're finna go to the Old Testament. I already read on BibleStudyTool.com, and I didn't forget BibleGateway.com, the Bible verse of the day, and Bible reading and all that. That's important. See this, things like this. See, sometimes you take it lightly. I don't leave myself out. Then when you be involved and engaged in something, then things are getting in your brain, and you be like, oh, that is a serious thing. That's a serious thing. So let's go over here to the Old Testament names of God. And don't forget the Tetragrammaton. The names of God in the Old Testament. Elohim, El Elyon, the Tetragrammaton, Yahweh, or Yahweh, and Jehovah. See, that's not left out. When you talk about that Tetragrammaton, Jehovah is not, but Yahweh is like the primary, and then they include Jehovah. And so we have Jehovah, Sikkenu, El Shaddai, Lord God Almighty, Jehovah Sheri, our shepherd, mighty God, Jehovah Nisi, Jehovah Jireh, El Shaddai, El, Jehovah. Don't forget now, the Tetragrammaton, Yahweh, and included in that Tetragrammaton also, they didn't leave out Jehovah. Jehovah, Mikot Dishkim, Abba, names of God from the Bible, Adonai, Jehovah Shalom, Jehovah Shammah, Jehovah Ra, the Lord my shepherd, El Olam, Jehovah Sabaoth, Alpha and Omega, Kana. So those are names of the God in the Old Testament. Now, when we talk about names of God in the New Testament, see, sometimes they get these names of God and it comes from on the web. That's the reason why I just read Old Testament names of God. It comes up on the screen, and I just read them off. About 15 names of God. Every time I go about the name of God in the New Testament, see, sometimes just like last week, sometimes the names of God, it'll come up on the screen, and I just gonna say about 13 or 15 names of God in the New Testament. This week, it didn't come up. Took me 15 minutes. I said, forget it. I just go to Christianity.com and we'll read that. And so names of God in the Bible. What they got here? Jehovah, names of God. Jehovah, names of God. Many names of God include Jehovah, a Yahweh variant translated to English as Lord. These are Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Rapha, Jehovah Nissi, Jehovah Shalom, Jehovah Ra. The Lord is my shepherd. Jehovah Tsidkenu, Jehovah Shammah. Yahweh, Lord, the personal name of God. Then there are other names of God in the scripture. Abba, Father, Adonai, Alpha and Omega, Ancient of Days, El Roy, Elohim, El Elyon, Jesus, Friend of Sinners. Then you have names of God in prophecy. Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, Ruler of Israel, Emmanuel, Branch, Lion of Judah. Then you have the names that God called himself. El Shaddai, the Good Shepherd, Physician. So like I said, we come from Christianity.com. So like I said, hey, the names of God in the Old Testament, it comes up on the screen. We online. And get about 15, come from the web. Then you go to the New Testament, names of God. Sometimes it comes up, and whatever come up on the screen, I just say, look, this is names of God in the New Testament. And it might, whatever comes up on the screen, them the names of God in the New Testament. This week took me 15 minutes. No matter how you write it in the search bar, it didn't come up. So just go to Christianity.com. Those are names of God in the New Testament. Because we're talking about the same God from the Old Testament to the New Testament. And see, things like this will becomes very clear. And it becomes very important. You can translate the Holy Bible from A to Z in languages all over the world. We're talking about Judaism. We're talking about all the Catholic churches, Roman Catholic churches, all your Eastern Orthodox churches, and all your Oriental Orthodox Catholic churches, and Protestant churches, denominational churches, and non-denominational churches. It's important, the names of God, Old Testament, New Testament. Now, they're tetragrammaton. See, things start coming clear to you. The tetragrammaton. Let's click over there. Now, we over here on Wikipedia. So let me scroll down to the bottom. We're on Wikipedia. All right. See also, all right, we got references. Notes. All right, we got citations. And we also have sources. All right. External links. All right. Don't forget footnotes. Things like that. Footnotes and citations and references and sources. This stuff is important. See, I like Wikipedia. That's the reason why. See, the PhD. And you going around talking about the sorority and fraternity, the sohos and the frat bitches. Then we're going to go over here to Encyclopedia Britannica. All right, we on Wikipedia, tetragrammaton. The tetragrammaton is the four-letter Hebrew theonym, transliterated as capital Y, capital H, capital W, capital H, or capital Y, capital H, capital V, capital H, the name of God in the Hebrew Bible. See how important it is? The four letters written in red from right to left in Hebrew are Y-O-D-H, H-E, W-A-W, and H-E. The name may be derived from a verb that means to be, to exist, to cause to become, or to come to pass. While there is no consensus about the structure and etymology of the name, the form Yahweh is now accepted almost universally among biblical and Semitic linguistic scholars, though the vocalization Jehovah continues to have wide usage. The books of the Torah and the rest of the Hebrew Bible, except Esther, Ecclesiastes, and with a possible instance of, in verse 8:6, the Song of Songs, contain this Hebrew name. Observant Jews and those who follow Talmudic Jewish tradition do not pronounce, nor do they read aloud proposed transcription forms such as Yahweh, or, don't forget, now watch this, such as Yahweh and what else? Jehovah. Don't forget, even though Yahweh, they also Jehovah. Instead, they replace it with a different term, whether in addressing or referring to the God of Israel. Common substitutions in Hebrew are Adonai, literal translation, my lords, pluralis, majestatis, taken as singular, or Elohim, literally gods, but treated as singular when meaning God in prayer. Hashem, the name in everyday speech. Then you have the four letters. Now let's deal with the etymology. The Hebrew Bible explains it by the formula. Now I don't speak Hebrew. Translated, he translated, I am that I am. The name of God revealed to Moses in Exodus 3:14. This would frame capital Y, capital H, capital W, capital H as a derivation from the Hebrew transcontinental root, HYH, to be, become, come to pass, with a third person masculine Y, prefix equivalent to English he, in place of the first person, thereby affording translations as he who causes to exist, he who is, etc. Although this would elicit the form capital Y, capital H, capital Y, capital H, not capital Y, capital H, capital W, capital H. To rectify this, some scholars propose that the Tetragrammaton represents a substitution of the medial Y for W, and occasionally attested practice in biblical Hebrew as both letters function as matrix lexionis. Others propose that the Tetragrammaton derived instead from the triconsonantal root to be constitute with the final form eliciting similar translation as those derived from HYH. As such, the consensus among modern scholars considers that capital Y, capital H, capital W, capital H represents a verbal form, with the Y representing the third masculine verbal prefix of the verb HYH, to be, as indicated in the Hebrew Bible. Vocalization. Like all letters in the Hebrew script, the letters in capital Y, capital H, capital W, capital H originally indicated consonants. In unpointed biblical Hebrew, most vowels are not written, but some are indicated ambiguously, as certain letters came to have a secondary function indicating vowels, similar to the Latin use of I and V to indicate either the consonants J, W, or the vowels IU. Hebrew letters used to indicate vowels are known as or matrix lectionist, mothers of reading. Therefore, it can be difficult to deduce how a word is pronounced from its spelling, and each of the 4 letters in the tetragrammaton can individually serve as a matrixlectionist. Several centuries later, between the 5th through 10th centuries CE, the original consonantal text of the Hebrew Bible was provided with vowel marks by the Masoretes to assist reading. In places where the word to be read, the kiri, differed from that indicated by the consonants of the written text, the ketub. They wrote the kiri in the margin as a note showing what was to be read. In such a case, the vowel marks of the kiri were written on the ketub. For a few frequent words, the marginal note was omitted. These are called kiri perpetuum. One of the frequent cases was the tetragrammaton, which, according to later rabbinic Jewish practices, should not be pronounced, but read as Adonai, literally translate, my lords, pluralis majestatis, taken as singular. Or, if the previous or next word already was Adonai, as Elohim, God. Writing the vowel diacritics of these 2 words on the consonants capital Y, capital H, capital V, capital H produces, and respectively, ghost words that would spell Yehovah and Yehovin, respectively. The oldest complete or nearly complete manuscripts of the Masoretic text with Tiberian vocalizations, such as the Aleppo Codex and the Leningrad Codex, both of the 10th or 11th century, mostly write Yahweh with no pointing on the first H. It could be because the O diacritic point plays no useful role in distinguishing between Adonai and Elohim, and so is redundant. Or it could point to the kiri being, which is Aramaic for the name. Now, Yahweh. The scholarly consensus is that the original pronunciation of the tetragram was Yahweh. Reno agrees that when in the late 1st millennium, Jewish scholars inserted indications of vowels into the Hebrew Bible, they signaled that what was pronounced was Adonai, Lord. Non-Jewish later combined the vowels of Adonai with the consonants of the tetragrammaton and invented the name Jehovah. Paul June and Takamitsu Muraka state the kiri is the Lord, whilst the ketub is probably, according to ancient witnesses, and they add note 1 in our translation, we have used Yahweh, a form widely accepted by scholars instead of the traditional Jehovah. In 1869, Smith's Bible Dictionary, a collaborative work of noted scholars of the time, declared, whatever therefore be the true pronunciation of the word, there can be little doubt that it is not Jehovah. Mark P. Arnold remarks that certain conclusions drawn from the pronunciation of as Yahweh would be valid even if the scholarly consensus were not correct. Thomas Romer holds that the original pronunciation of Yahweh was Yeho or Yehu. Max Riesel, in The Mysterious Name of Yahweh, said that the vocalization of the tetragrammaton must originally have been Yahuwah or Yahuwah. No. The element Yahweh is found in Amorite personal name Yahweh, commonly denoted as the semantic equivalent of the academe. The latter refers to one existing which, in the context of deities, can also refer to one's eternal existence, which aligns with Bible verses such as Exodus 3:15 and views that can mean I am the existing one. It also explains the ease of Israelites applying the olam or everlasting epithet from El to Yahweh. But J. Philip Hyde believes it is more likely that Yahweh refers to a God creating in sustaining the life of a newborn child rather than the universe. This conception of God was more popular among ancient Near Easterners, but eventually the Israelites removed the association of Yahweh to any human ancestor and combined it with other elements, Yahweh. Halil bin Sasson states there is insufficient evidence for Amorites using Yahweh to refer to a god, but he argues that it mirrors other theophoric names and that Yahweh, or more accurately, Yahweh, derived from the root HWY, and which means he will be. Now, pay attention. The adoption at the time of the Protestant Reformation of Jehovah in place of the traditional Lord in some new translation, vernacular or Latin of the biblical tetragrammaton, stirred up dispute about its correctness. In 1711, Adrian Reeland published a book containing the text of the 17th century writing, 5 attacking and 5 defending it, as critical of the use of Jehovah. It incorporated writing by Johannes van Dendriesche, 1550 to 1616, known as Drusius, Sixtinus Amama, 1593 to 1629, Louis Capel, 1585 1658, and Johannes Bustorff, 1564 to 1629, Jacob Alting, 1618 and 1679. Defending Jehovah were writings by Nicholas Fuller, 1557 to 1626, and Thomas Gattaker, 1574, 1654, and 3 essays by Johann Leusden, 1624 to 1699. The opponents of Jehovah said that the Tetragrammaton should be pronounced as Adonai, and in general do not speculate on what may have been the original pronunciation, although mention is made of the fact that some held that Javi was their pronunciation. Almost 2 centuries after the 17th century work reprinted by Breland, 19th century Wilhelm Gesenius reported in his Thesaurus Philologicus on the main reasoning of those who argue either for or Yahweh as the original pronunciation of the Tetragrammaton, as opposed to Jehovah. He explicitly cited the 17th century writers mentioned by Reeland as supporters of, as well as implicitly cited Johann David Michaelis, 1717 to 1791, and Johann Friedrich von Meyer, 1772 to 1849. The latter of whom, Johann Heinrich Kurtz, described as the last of those who have maintained with great pertinacity that was the correct and original point. Edward Robertson's translation of a work by Gesenius gives Gesenius' personal view as my own view coincide with that of those who regard this name as anciently pronounced Yahweh, like the Samaritans. Now, so as you can see, this is very serious. We're talking about Old Testament and New Testament, and trying to about the name of God. So like I said, hey, BibleStudy2.com, BibleGateway.com, all these available versions of the Holy Bible, and then being translated from A to Z in languages all over the world. And we see this scholarly disagreement or scholarly confusion about the Tetragrammaton. Now, to the Jews, of course, the Tetragrammaton is sacred and holy. They don't even read it out loud. Even in the Bible, even in their worship service. And won't even say the word. And let alone talking about reading it. And not just Yahweh, but then you include Jehovah. See, this is serious. That's the reason why, you know what I'm saying, when we read, we take it serious. It's serious. anti-gang, anti-Gnostic, anti-Haze. Also, adversus, heresies, translated mean against heresies. Saint Irenaeus, the Bishop of Lyon, together with Saint Ignatius, the Bishop of Antioch, wrote a 5-volume book refuting Gnosticism, proving that Gnosticism was a heresy. Also, Saint Athanasius, the Bishop of Alexandria, in the year 367 AD, his 39th festival letter, Easter letter, banned all non-Christian writing. Saint Athanasius, the Bishop of Alexandria, together with all the other bishops in the Catholic Church, they went around and collected all that Gnostic theologian writing, and they destroyed it. Some of that Gnostic theologian writing didn't get destroyed. For example, the Askew Codex, the Bruce Codex, and the Berlin Codex, they didn't get destroyed. Also, the Nag Hammadi Library that was discovered in 1946, the little farm boy was outside playing. And he gave what he found to his father, who was a farmer. Some of the scholars around the world, they was inquiring about it. For example, Mr. Dorisi, a French archaeologist and Egyptologist. He tried to find out about it, as well as other scholars at the colleges and universities around the world. And eventually, the Egyptian Department of Antiquities, they got their possession of the Nag Hammadi Library and put it in their museum. Then some of the scholars around the world, they continued to inquire about the Nag Hammadi Library. One man died, Mr. John. He died trying to get possession of the Nag Hammadi Library. UNESCO, they had commissioned Mr. Robinson to get some scholars together to translate the Nag Hammadi Library. And eventually it was translated. Mr. Robinson got his translation, as well as other people got their translation. And then eventually it took all the way up to the 1980s and 1990s for the college and university to get their facsimile for the translation of the Nag Hammadi Library. So it took a lot of time for all this Nag Hammadi Library, as well as some other codexes, to be translated. Also, St. Epiphanius of Salome, the Bishop of Cyprus, wrote a 3-volume book titled Panarium, Greek, Panarium, Latin, translated meaning bread basket. The scholars at the college and universities around the world said that St. Epiphanius of Salome, Bishop of Cyprus, 3-volume book is also adverse heresies, against heresies. You see, Hippolytus of Rome, apparently, he supposedly had wrote a book titled Against All Heresies. That was the title. Hippolytus of Rome. And apparently, he was a bishop of Rome and one of the most important 2nd, 3rd century Christian theologians. And Now, it says some controversy around the corpus of the writer Hippolytus. Claimed that his principal work to be the refutation of all heresies, and that books 2 and 3 are lost, and books 4 through 10 were found without the name of the author in the monastery of Mount Athos in 1842. Emmanuel Miller published them in 1851 under the title attributing them to Origin of Alexandria. And so, like I said, Hippolytus are wrong. Apparently, they really not, the scholars around the world are not really trying to say that, but apparently, the scholars claim that his principal work, the refutation of all heresies. And so, like I say, it said we're reading around the 3rd century, and it's attributed to Hippolytus of Rome, or an unknown pseudo Hippolytus is disputed. It catalogs both pagan beliefs and 33 Gnostic Christian systems deemed heretical by Hippolytus, making it a major source of information on contemporary opponents of Christian Orthodoxy as understood today. And like I said, books 2 and 3 have not been unearthed, and their contents remain the subject of conjecture. It's divided into 10 books, like I say, 8 of which have survived more or less intact. And so, like I say, all that stupid Gnostic mess. I mean, that stuff was around during that period of time, and the second and third, that Gnostic nonsense. Apparently, right after the historical Jesus, around the beginning of the 1st century, and then with the, all the events around the historical Jesus, death, burial, and resurrection, then the 12 apostles. See, the stuff about the Gnostics, the 12 apostles was around. It didn't flourish. The Gnostic nonsense didn't flourish. When the 12 apostles departed, when they left, that's, stuff started becoming known. It started to spread. But the church, the Catholic Church, continued to stand. That's the reason why St. Irenaeus, the Bishop of Antioch, St. Irenaeus, the Bishop of Lyon, with St. Ignatius, the Bishop of Antioch, they wrote that book against against heresies and versus heresies. And so, the church, the Catholic Church, they stood strong against it. They, exposed all the lies that they were telling. See, these stupid people, even today, they try to be violent. They try to congregate somewhere where they can think they can get away with trying to hide and then try to get a lot of other people. They lie to little children, first of all. Little boys and little girls get lied to. They get abused, you know, and be lied to by these ignorant people. Calling these, you know, because it ain't no such thing as no Gnostic. They just make up a bunch of lies. They just be lying. It's your imagination, you know, doing all these, you know, despicable and disgusting sex acts and doing all this stupid stuff. Talking about the material world, even they syncretize everything. They take information from other beliefs and faiths and distort it, lie, just like they do today. Be self-destructive and destructive. They be self-destructive and destructive, trying to destroy wildlife, nature, and the environment. Even today, going out in space. Look at the North and South Pole being destroyed. And all this anal sex nonsense. And then trying to go around trying to all this transgender, transsexual, you know, all that kind of stupid mess. And you got to find some kind of way to try to validate that nonsense. So what you do, you try to make up a religion. You know, you try to make up something. You ain't doing them a lie. That's all you do is lie. And like I said, you don't do no more lie. You try to make up all kind of stupid lies. like New Age and all that, all that kind of stuff. All that kind of ignorant stuff. You try to make up stuff. You try to take information from the past, and then you try to disguise it. That's what they did. That's what they do. They try to take information and try to disguise the lies they tell, and then they go around trying to be violent. No matter what the violence may be, it might be physical violence, verbal, sexual, but they try to be violent. In all this gang nonsense, they try to be violent. The Almighty, Conservative, Vice Lord, Four Corner Hustle. The Almighty, Black, Prince Stone. The Almighty, Mickey, Cobra Stone, Crack. The Almighty, Black Disciple, Pop. The Almighty Bluefin, Black Disciple, the Black Disciple. Lord, Stone, Disciple. Gangster Disciple Killer, GDK. Glazed Donut Killer, GDK. 7-11, G Killer, Goofy. Now, as I continue to say, Lord Stone disciple, it's still Lord Stone disciple. You can't lie. And that's what people have been doing. They've been lying to men, women, and children. Been lying, trying to use this Gnostic stuff as a way to lie. Hell, they'll use Freemasonry, Prince Hall, Freemason, anything. They just lie. That's all. That's what Martin Luther did, lie. That's what Martin Luther and the Protestants did, lie. Even today, they still lying. That's all it's about, man. Lying, just lie. And be violent. Lie and be violent. That's all they do. Lie and be violent. Then being violent could be physical, sexual, verbal, direct, indirect, in all shape, forms, and fashion. Just be violent. For example, slavery, violence. Just be violent. You ain't got to be right. See, that was going on today. For example, out there in Los Angeles, California, the so-called blood gang, Crip gang. See, you ain't never been right. See, when we keep talking about this Gnostic nonsense, they made that junk up, and you see all that martyrdom, you ain't finna never say that committing martyrdom is right. You ain't gonna never say that. All the people that wanted to be, that were Catholic, all the bishops. For example, we just got through reading about Hippolytus of Rome. He was martyred also. He was also martyred. A lot of men and women and children, they were martyred by the so-called pagans. At that time, the Romans and their beliefs. You're going to sit up here and argue with somebody about what they believe and like that's right? You're going to sit up here and argue with somebody that what the Romans who were in some kind of power on this earth at that time, you're going to sit up here and argue that was right and that the people who were martyred, they were wrong. And it was right to kill them. You ain't finna get no argument about it. Because when Constantine came to power, he was converted. And all that martyrdom, it ended. So you're not going to get into no argument about right and wrong. Before Constantine, the people who were leaders, they martyred the Catholics. Then Constantine, who was a Roman, he came to power. He converted, became just like the people who were martyred, a Catholic. And at the time when he became a Catholic, he was sitting at the scene when they had the creed. He was sitting right there. He was the emperor, presiding over the council at Nicaea. You gonna sit up here and argue something? The people who were martyred, they were wrong? No, you ain't finna argue with nobody about that. And then Constantine, he converted, and then all the martyrdom ended. So like I said, man, then you just be violent. You ain't never right. You ain't gonna never, talking about some Gnostic. You ain't gonna never be right. That's the reason why St. Irenaeus, the Bishop of Lyons, together with St. Ignatius, the Bishop of Antioch, 5-volume book, Adversus Heresies, against heresies. And again, we was talking about Hippolytus of Rome. The book, allegedly, he or some other person wrote, Refutation of all heresies. Then later on, St. Epiphanes of Salome, the Bishop of Cyprus, He also wrote a 3-volume book refuting many of the same heresies that St. Irenaeus and St. Ignatius had already refuted in their book Adversus Heresies, against heresies. Many of the exact same heresies, but the refutation of all heresies, some of it been lost, but then they still have the scholars. They say books 4 through 10 have been found, and many of those heresies, Gnostics, have been refuted, because it ain't nothing but a big lie. All it is lies. And see, this was what many of those people who tried to talk about slavery tried to use. Information that had been refuted. They took information from the heresiology, and it was already a lie, then they just compound that lie. It's just like them codexes. People be looking at the codex, they'll sit around and lie and then try to have anal sex. So they can have anal sex. The material world's evil. We're going to have anal sex. Men and women having anal sex. But Lord Stone disciple is still Lord Stone disciple. You ain't finna never get away with lying. You ain't gonna never get away with lying. You ain't gonna never get away with that. So you can keep on making vlogs or whatever, and you can keep on talking about some people over there on the East Coast. It's gonna be payback. It's gonna be payback. Past, present, and future. It's gonna be payback. Because first of all, I ain't finna sit around and take nothing off no bitches. No. Now them police cars riding around. No. You're talking about this gangster disciple mess. Man, all it is a big lie. A big lie. Now I'm over here on ChicagoGangHistory.com, and it's Peon Larry Hoover and the rest of them punks call themselves the gangster disciples and cowards. Bunch of ignorant buffoons. Now that we began the story with the creation of the disciples, now let's look into the formation of the gangsters. This took place in Inglewood in the year 1964. More specifically at 68th and Green, a group of 30 young black youths got together at this intersection as they hung out in Larry Hoover's home and watched outside the window as gangsters and pimps hung out in the parking lot of the Guys and Gals nightclub that used to exist at that intersection. These boys wanted to be just like these pimps and gangsters, and they were living on the border of Ranger and Disciple territory. Larry Hoover was inspired to be a leader of the gangsters and began dressing himself very well to fit the role. Eventually, these boys created their own club called the Supreme Gangsters, which was Larry Hoover's idea for the club name. Larry Hoover himself was not the first official leader, but more of a behind-the-scenes type leader. Hoover teamed up with street hustler Andrew D.D. Howard and King Ike Taylor and made King Ike his right-hand man. The Supreme Gangsters wore the color black, and their symbols were a heart with wings and a round crown with a sword going through it. The Supreme Gangsters saluted each other with their clenched fist as their hand sign. Peons. Peons. Lord Stone disciple. Hey, you can't stand on a lie. That's all that is, a lie. Trying to go around trying to use Gnosticism? No. And hey, they not the only one. I ain't been saying that. I mentioned it, but that Supreme Gangster New Breed, we gonna get on there. I'm gonna lead that. I'm gonna make sure you gonna get the damn mess. It's gonna be payback. Because all that nonsense, you know what I'm saying, ain't nothing but a lie. So whatever you thought you got away with, from here on out, like I've been telling you, time. See, you got in your head that you had all this time. Well, from this point on, you got a whole lot of time. Payback. And talking about some damn hoes, payback. Now, just like that gangster disciple, a bunch of nobodies trying to sit around in the city of Chicago for no reason. Trying to go against Lord Stone's disciples. Thought you gonna get away with Gnosticism. And as you can see, you didn't know what you was talking about. Then had the nerve to try to get mad. Trying to go around, trying to go behind other people's backs. Trying to be violent. Larry Hoover, a peon, sitting his butt up in the, you know what I'm saying, in the federal penitentiary trying to make parole. But hey, like I told you, hey, this ain't no motherfucking game to me. Cause see, behind me, that's my dad and that's my mom. and that's my Uncle Lemuel. And in the city of Chicago, like I've been telling you, first of all, my grandma, my daddy's side of the family, my grandma, before she passed away, she was living in Chicago. Miss Ludabelle Johnson, Miss Ludabelle Dixon Johnson. And Miss Ludabelle Dixon Johnson, she had another son, the third of her children. My Uncle Walter, born in Mississippi, lived in Mississippi, growed up in Mississippi, moved to Chicago where he passed away. My Uncle Walter. And Grandmama's daughter, Virgin May, was living in Chicago when she passed, up until she passed away. Now Uncle Demo, James Demo, was living in Mississippi up until he passed away. Grandmama's other son. And Grandmama's other son, Burley, was living in Chicago up until the time he passed away. Now, your common sense will tell you, I leave my video and I mention them people's names, somebody gonna walk up to me and say, yeah, I know who you talking about. I know who you talking about. See, my Uncle Walter and my Aunt Nora were married and had a first cousin named James, living in Chicago. And when people say, yeah, I seen the picture, I know who you talking about. This your first cousin. See? And you think you're going to play with me? You got another thing coming. You got another thing coming. And on my mama's side, see, grandmama and granddad, I ain't even, on my dad's side, granddad from Mississippi, Chester Johnson Sr. After him and grandmama departed, separated, over in Detroit, Michigan. Chester Johnson Sr. Up until the day he passed away, was living in Detroit, Michigan. On mama's side, grandmama and granddad from Mississippi. That's where they were born and was living. Then they moved to Memphis. Grandmama, Annie Nelson Lockett. Granddad, Elmore Lockett. Elmore Lockett. Took me years, I had to get it right. Elmore Lockett. See, granddad and grandmama, they had a house out there in North Memphis. Every Sunday after church. Well, not every Sunday, but some Sundays. Be over there at grandmama and granddad's house in North Memphis. They from Mississippi. See? Some of the, how many children? 12, 13 children. Some of them died in birth. My mama's brother, Calvin or George. I think it was George Lockett. Might have been Calvin. Might have been both of them. Was living in Chicago. When he passed away. Then had nerve. See, both of them did the same thing. The gangster disciple going around talking about some growth and deal. Now, if you gullible and naive, I done told you. You better not try me. You better not try me, man. You better not try me. And them damn new breeds did the same thing. Talking about some better guidance. I tell you what. You gonna get some better guidance. Gonna send your ass right away from here. You gonna be laying over there in that damn graveyard. That's going to be your better guidance. Going to kill you. Because I ain't gullible. I ain't naive. thing you did made me mad. That's the only thing you do, make me mad. And then, we were talking about Constantine. I just want to throw this in there. We were talking about Constantine converted. Did you not see the Jews? Did you not see the Jews? See, this is what I be. See, this is the reason why this stuff is serious. You got people being martyred, being killed because of what they believe by some other people based on what they believe. Did you not see the Jews? And let me remind you, Rabbi Akiva, for example, Rabbi Akiva, one of the most respected Jewish rabbis who was also killed in the Bar Kokhba revolt, because the Jews were revolting against the people who were in power, the Romans. They were revolting, and he fought in the Bar Kokhba revolt and was killed. Before he got killed, Rabbi Akiva stated he did not want Gnostic to have any influence on Judaism. And he did not want that Grecian philosophy to be an influence on Judaism like Gnosticism. He did not want that Gnosticism to be an influence on Judaism, as well as all that intellectual stuff. This is what Rabbi Akiva said. When it comes to Constantine being the emperor, he converted to be a Catholic. But being a Catholic, Constantine, what about the Jews? And what about Judaism? He became a Catholic. Now I intend to throw that out there. Now we will go to the beginning of the breed history. The breed history on the streets began in the year 1969 in the North Lawndale neighborhood at the intersection of 19th to 16th in Kedzie, right near Douglas Park. The original gang was called the Goon Squad or Goon Squad Gangsters. Its possible founder was named Rab. This was a group of rather violent, crazy youth that were quick with the trigger. They had violent gang wars with the vice lord, especially traveling vice lord, and were recognized by police as far back as 1969 and even made the newspaper a few times, dating back to 1969. The Goons made the newspaper 3 times, beginning in 1969, again in 1970, and finally in 1972. All 3 times the Goons were involved in violent crime. Booney was not part of this gang despite what many believe. He was a 31-year-old man and in prison at the time, would not be the leader of teenagers shooting and stabbing rivals in the streets while making the newspaper. The Goons get lots of credit, though, because they were starting during a time when North Lawndale was untouchable for new gangs to form, because the Vice Lords and Egyptian Cobras ruled their whole neighborhood with an iron fist. The Vice Lords alone ran it from Pulaski to Douglas Park, but the Goons dared to challenge them. The Goons were perhaps more violent than the Vice Lord, which would later get them noticed by the black gangsters once their leadership ended up in prison. Goons lived up to their name and would later work as murder for hire types just like the black gangsters and Booney. The next part of this story began in the year 1972 in Statesville Maximum Security Prison in Crest Hill, Illinois. An inmate by the name of Julius Davis joined in with a semi-religious group called the Cosmo, which happened to be a group of Chicago gang members from the west side of Chicago. I do not know what gang Julius Davis was a member of, but he organized the men to create their own crime syndicate that would become the Royal Family. Members of this group were in street gangs like Black Gangster, Disciples, and Vice Lord, and they were some of the most hardcore gang members of these gangs. They set aside their rival to be a part of the Royal Family. One of the prominent members was Maurice King Baldy Jackson. The men that joined the Royal Family were scheduled to be released from prison in 1972, and they planned on coming together once released and going on a crime spree and letting nothing get in their way. It is interesting to me how all these men just so happen to get released at the same time. This leads me to believe the Royal Family consulted with Jeepers for their legal advice, and perhaps Jeepers helped them to fight their legal battles and get released. Additionally, Jeepers was well known to be a colorful storyteller who loved to share his criminal exploits of being the stick-up man. I theorize it's very possible he told these stick-up stories to the Royal Family and inspired them to begin this armed robbery spree they were about to embark upon. When released, doing stick-ups became the early pastime of the Royal Family, and they may have been helped along with advice from Jeepers himself while they were all locked up together. Jeepers was in prison in the early 70s, so it was very possible. One thing to clarify, though, the violence that was committed along the way of the Royal Family's robbery would have not been part of Jeepers' advice. Jeepers was never a violent man in any way, shape, or form. Jeepers was said to be a good man and kind-hearted. Now, that's enough for me to read, but just want to say this. See, all by that time, you can't come behind Lord Stone and Cypress. See, this is how you know that you try to use Gnosticism. All this time, the Lord, Stones, disciples. Then you hear all this stuff, this stupid stuff, talking about some black gangster disciple. And now you hear this in 1969, come behind all this Then you talking about this stupid guy with a hat on his head, this boony, stupid black, you know, and call himself trying to be the leader. Him and Larry Hoover call themselves gonna stick each other, have each other stuck in the jail. Yeah, I ain't tell you about that, but later on I'll tell you about it. Yeah, I'll tell you about the time when Larry Hoover and this boony black stuck. I ain't tell you about that, but later on I get it. But right now I ain't got time. But see, it wasn't no reason for that. See, what you try to do, this stupid boony black know damn well his ignorant butt didn't know nothing what he was talking about. And the rest of them little kids, talking about in 1969, talking about getting into a gang war. See, you already got the Lords, Stones, and the Disciples. And just like they told you, the Egyptian Cobra, they ran the neighborhood with an iron fist. But you gonna call yourself trying to be violent. That's all you doing, trying to be violent. But you ain't standing on nothing. You ain't standing on nothing. You just a bunch of fools trying to be violent. Trying to be violent. See, when you try to do that, then you look out there in California, in Los Angeles, California, you see the Blood gang, the Crip gang. Now I know about the Black Prince Stone Blood. See, that's what I'm telling them. See, when you see the nonsense that people say, they not standing on nothing. That Crip gang, they ain't standing. See, they from down here. Just like my grandma and granddad and my dad and mama's side from Mississippi. The people that was trying to come out to California, to Los Angeles, California, they from Mississippi. They from Louisiana. They from Alabama. They from Arkansas. They from Tennessee. They from Texas. That's where they came from. And they all bunched up out there in Los Angeles, California, calling themselves a gang. They ain't standing on nothing. They ain't, they just a bunch of fools out there just trying to be violent. Now we over here on Wikipedia. Let me scroll down. Jewish principles of faith. References. And further reading. Judaism does not centralize authority in any single individual or group. The formulation of the principles of faith that are universally recognized by all branches of Judaism remains undefined. There is no central authority in Judaism in existence today, although the Sanhedrin, the supreme Jewish religious court, would fulfill this role if it were reestablished. Instead, Judaism's principle of faith remains debated by the rabbi based on their understanding of the sacred writings, laws, and traditions, which collectively shape its theological and ethical framework. The most accepted version in extent is the opinion of Maimonides. Judaism affirms the existence and uniqueness of God and stresses performance of deeds or commandments alongside adherence to a strict belief system. In contrast to religions such as Christianity, which demand a more explicit identification of God, faith in Judaism requires one to honor God through adherence to God's instructions, Torah, and the practice of all of the mitzvah. Orthodox Judaism stresses a number of core principles in its educational program. Most importantly, believe that there is one single, omniscient, transcendent, non-compound God who created the universe and continues to be concerned with this governance. Traditional Judaism maintains that God established a covenant with the Jewish people at Mount Sinai and revealed his laws and 613 commandments to them in the form of the written and oral Torah. In Rabbinic Judaism, the Torah consists of both the written Torah, Pentateuch, and the traditional oral law, much of it later codified in sacred writing. See Mishnah and Talmud. Traditionally, the practice of Judaism has been devoted to the study of Torah and observance of its laws and commandments. In normative Judaism, the Torah, and hence Jewish law itself, is unchanging, but interpretation of the law is more open. It is considered a mitzvah, commandment, to study and understand the law. The proper counterpart for the general English term faith, as occurring in the expressive principle of faith, will be the concept of emunah. In Judaism, the word amen comes from this word and means I trust, believe. While it is generally translated as faith or trust in God, the concept of emunah can more accurately be described as an innate conviction, a perception of truth that transcends reason. Emunah can be enhanced through wisdom, knowledge, understanding, and learning of sacred Jewish writing. But emunah is not simply based on reason, nor can it be understood as the opposite of or standing in contrast to reason. There are a number of basic principles that were formulated by many medieval rabbinic authorities. These are put forth as fundamental underpinnings inherent in the acceptance and practice of Judaism. Conception of God. Monotheism. Judaism is based on a strict monotheism and a belief in one single, indivisible, non-compound God, the Shema Yisrael. One of the most important Jewish prayers encapsulates the monotheistic nature of Judaism. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Judaism emphatically rejects any concept of plurality with respect to God, explicitly rejecting polytheism, dualism, and Trinitarianism, which are incompatible with monotheism as Judaism understands. The unity of God is stated many times in Jewish tradition. It is the second of Maimonides' 13 principles of faith. Maimonides wrote that this God is one, not two or more than two, but one whose unity is different from all other unity there are. He is not one as a genus, which contains many species, is one, nor is he one as a body containing parts and dimensions is one, but his is a unity that which there is no other anywhere. Yesodi HaTorah. In Jewish tradition, dualistic and Trinitarian conceptions of God are generally referred to as Shatu, partnership, meaning an incorrect but not an idolatrous view. God is the creator of the universe. Most Jews believe that God is creator of the universe. Different sets of Jews view this in different ways. For example, some ultra-Orthodox groups reject the concept of evolution and believe the earth to be only a few thousand years old. Other groups of Orthodox and non-Orthodox Jews do not believe in a literal interpretation of the Genesis creation narrative. And according to that view, Judaism is not in contradiction to the scientific model that states that the age of the universe is around 13.77 billion years old. Norbert M. Samuelson writes, the question of dating the universe has never been a problem of Jewish philosophy, ultimately because their philosophy has never taken the literal meaning of the Bible to be its revealed true meaning, while the general Jewish attitude has been that God created the world ex nihilo. Rabbi Mark D. Angel writes that historically there has been a general reluctance in Jewish tradition to speculate on the metaphysical aspects of creation. The important statement for Judaism that God did in fact create the world. An evolutionary process did not simply happen by itself, but was set into motion by God. When the Bible speaks of God creating the world in 6 days, it may be speaking figuratively. The word yom, day, yarn. The word yom, day, in the creation story can hardly be proved to be referring to a day of 24 hours. After all, the sun itself was not created until the fourth day. So it's impossible to argue that the first 3 days were days as we know them. A more appropriate way to understand the creation story is that God created the universe in 6 days, and each of these days may have taken millions of years or 24 hours or instant. In short, Judaism insists that God created the world, that he created it in stages, and that he continues to maintain the universe which he created. The specific details of the creation process are not central to Jewish thought. Moses, Maimonides, 12th century, wrote that by virtue of the existence of the Creator, everything exists, and that time itself is part of creation, and therefore, when God is described as existing before the creation of the universe, the notion of time should not be understood in its normal sense. The 15th century Jewish philosopher Joseph Albo argued, similarly in his Ikarim, that there are two types of time: measured time, which depends on motion, and time in the abstract, the second of which has no origin and is the infinite space of time before the universe was created. Also, Albo argued that although it is difficult to conceive of God existing in such a duration, it is likewise difficult to imagine God outside space. Other Jewish writers have come to different conclusions, such as 13th century scholar Beya ben Asher, 16th century scholar Moses Amos Nino, and the 18th century Hasidic teacher Naaman Abraslev, who expressed a view similar to that expressed by the Christian Neoplatonic writer Boethius, that God lives in the eternal present and transcends or is above all time. Now, the nature of God. The Jewish view is that God is eternal, with neither beginning nor end, a principle stated in a number of biblical passages. The rabbis taught a quite literal, down-to-earth view of the eternalness of God, that God is eternal, but it is not given to man to explore the full meaning of this idea. And so, one cannot therefore expect to find in the rabbinic literature anything like a detailed examination of what is meant by divine eternity. A famous Mishnah statement on attempts to pierce the veil is this: whoever reflects on 4 things, it were better for him that he had not come into the world: what is above, what is beneath, what is before, and what is after. The traditional Jewish view is that God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent. Various Jewish thinkers, however, have proposed a finite God, sometimes in response to the problem of evil, and ideas about free will. Louis Jacobs writes that modern Jewish thinkers such as Levi Olin, echoing some classical Jewish writers such as the 14th century Talmudists, Gosenides, have thought of God as limited by his own nature, so that while he is infinite in some respects, he is finite in others. Referencing the idea present in classical source that there is a primal, formless material coexistent with God from all eternity, upon which God has to work, and that God only knows the future in a general sense, but not how individual men will exercise their choice. On the topic of omniscience and free will, Jacobs writes that in the medieval period, 3 views were put forth. Maimonides, who wrote that God had foreknowledge and man is free. Gosenides, who wrote that man is free and consequently God does not have complete knowledge. And Hasidic Crescus, who wrote in Odone that God has complete knowledge and consequently man is not really free. Several Jewish writers have dealt with the issue of theodicy, whether and how God is all powerful and all good, given the existence of evil in the world, particularly the Holocaust. John D. Levinson argues that omnipotence doctrine fails to give due regard to the formidability and resilience of the forces counteracting creation, such as the primordial state of chaos existing before creation, and leads to a neglect of the role of humanity in forming and stating the world order. Hans Jonas proposed a tentative myth that God chose in the beginning to give God's self over to the chance and risk and endless variety of becoming, entering into the adventure of space and time. Jonas expressed the view that God does not create the world by fiat, although God does create the world, but leads it by beckoning it into novel possibilities of becoming. Jonas, who was influenced by the Holocaust experience, believed that God is omnipresent, but not in all respects non-temporal, impassible, immutable, and unqualified omnipotent. Most of the classical Judaism views God as a personal God, Rabbi Samuel S. Cohen wrote that God as conceived by Judah is not only the first cause, the creative power and the world reason, but also the living and loving Father of men. He is not only cosmic but also personal. Jewish monotheism thinks of God in terms of the definite character or personality, while pantheism is content with a view of God as impersonal. This is shown in the Jewish liturgy, such as the Adon Olam hymn, which includes a confident affirmation that He is my God, my living God, who hears and answers. Elba Kiesler writes that Hebrew Bible portrays an encounter with a God who cares passionately and who addresses humanity in the quiet moments of its existence. British Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sacks suggests that God is not distant in time or detached, but passionately engaged and present. The predicate person as applied to God does not mean that God is corporeal or anthropomorphic, views which Judaism has always rejected. Rather, personality refers not to physicality but to inner essence, physical, rational, and moral. Although most Jews believe that God can be experienced, it is understood that God cannot be understood because God is utterly unlike humankind, as shown in God's response to Moses. When Moses asked for God's name, I am that I am. All anthropomorphic statements about God are understood as linguistic metaphors, otherwise it would be impossible to talk about God at all. Although the dominant strain in Judaism is that God is personal, there is an alternate stream of tradition exemplified by Maimonides, who along with several other Jewish philosophers rejected the idea of a personal God. This reflected his belief in negative theology, that God can only be described by what God is not. Rabbi Mordecai Kaplan, who developed Reconstructionist Judaism and taught at the Conservative Jewish Theological Seminary of America, also rejected the idea of a personal God. Kaplan instead thought of God as a force, like gravity, built into the very structure of the universe, believing that since the universe is constructed to enable us to gain personal happiness and communal solidarity when we act morally, it follows that there is a moral force in the universe. This force is what the constructionists mean by God. Although some Reconstructionists do believe in a personal God, according to Joseph Telushkin and Morris N. Kurtzer, Kaplan's nationalist rejection of the traditional Jewish understanding of God exerted a powerful influence on many conservative and reformed rabbis, influencing many to stop believing in a personal God. According to the Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life's 2008 U.S. Religious Landscape Survey, Americans who identify as Jewish by religion are twice as likely to favor ideas of God as an impersonal force over the idea that God is a person with whom people can have a relationship. Sole devotion to the Creator. Within Judaism, the essence of worship is deeply rooted in the belief of monotheism, emphasizing the exclusive devotion to the Creator. This principle dictates that worship and reverence should be directed solely towards God, as articulated by Maimonides' fifth principle of faith. According to this belief, no entity aside from the Creator is deemed worthy of worship. Revelation, Scripture. The Hebrew Bible, or Tanakh, is the Jewish scriptural canon and central source of Jewish law. The word is an acronym formed from the initial Hebrew letters of the three traditional subdivisions of the Tanakh. The Torah, teaching, also known as the 5 books of Moses or Pentateuch. The Nevi'im, prophets, and the Ketuvim, writings. The Tanakh contains 24 books in all. Its authoritative version is the Masoretic text. Traditionally, the text of the Tanakh was said to have been finalized at the Council of Jamnia in 70 CE. Although this is uncertain, in Judaism, the term Torah referred not to only the 5 books of Moses, but also to all of the Jewish scripture, the whole of Tanakh, and the ethical and moral instruction of the rabbis, the oral Torah. In addition to the Tanakh, there are 2 further textual tradition in Judaism, Mishnah, tractates expounding on Jewish law, and the Talmud, commentary of Mishnah and Torah. These are both codifications and redactions of the Jewish oral tradition and major works in rabbinic Judaism. The Talmud consists of the Babylonian Talmud, produced in Babylon around 600 CE, and the Jerusalem Talmud, produced in the land of Israel circa 400 CE. The Babylonian Talmud is the more extensive of the two, and is considered the more important. The Talmud is a representation of the Torah, though sustained analysis and argument, with unfolding dialogue and contention between rabbinic sages. The Talmud consists of the Mishnah, a legal code, and the Gemara, Aramaic for learning, and analysis and commentary to that code. Rabbi Adin Stansos writes that if the Bible is the cornerstone of Judaism, then the Talmud is the central pillar. No other work has had a comparable influence on the theory and practice of Jewish life, shaping influence on the theory and practice of Jewish life and states. The Talmud is the repository of thousands of years of Jewish wisdom and the oral law, which is as ancient and significant as the written law. The Torah finds expression therein. It is a conglomerate of law, legend, and philosophy, a blend of unique logic and shrewd pragmatism, of history and science, anecdotes and humor, although its main objective is to interpret and comment on a book of law. It is simultaneously a work of art that goes beyond legislation and its practical application. And although the Talmud is, to this day, the primary source of Jewish law, it cannot be cited. It cannot be cited as an authority for purposes of ruling. Though based on the principle of tradition and the transmission of authority from generation to generation, it is unparalleled in its eagerness to question and re-examine convention and accepted views, and to root out underlying cause. The Talmudic method of discussion and demonstration tries to approximate mathematical precision, but without having recourse to mathematical or logical symbols. The Talmud is the embodiment of the great concept of mitzvah Talmud Torah, the positive religious duty of studying Torah, of acquiring learning and wisdom, study which is its own end and reward. Moses and the Torah. Orthodox and conservative Jews hold that the prophecy of Moses is held to be true. He is held to be the chief of all prophets, even of those who came before and after him. Excuse me. This belief was expressed by Maimonides, who wrote that Moses was superior to all prophets, whether they preceded him or arose afterwards. Moses attained the highest possible human level. He perceived God to a degree surpassing every human that ever existed. God spoke to all other prophets through an intermediary. Moses alone did not need this. This is what the Torah means when God said, mouth to mouth, I will speak to him. The great Jewish philosopher Philo understands this type of prophecy to be an extraordinarily high level of philosophical understanding, which had been reached by Moses, and which enabled him to write the Torah through his own rational deduction of natural law. Maimonides described a similar concept of prophecy, since a voice that did not originate from a body cannot exist. The understanding of Moses was based on his lofty philosophical understanding. However, this does not imply that the text of the Torah should be understood literally, as according to charisma. Rabbinic tradition maintained that God conveyed not only the words of the Torah, but the meaning of the Torah. God gave rules as to how the law was to be understood and implemented, and these were passed down as an oral tradition. This oral law was passed down from generation to generation and ultimately written down almost 2,000 years later in the Mishnah, in the two Talmuds. For Reformed Jews, the prophecy of Moses was not the highest degree of prophecy, rather it was the first in a long chain of progressive revelation in which mankind gradually began to understand the will of God better and better. As such, they maintain that the laws of Moses are no longer binding, and it is today's generation that must assess what God wants of them. This principle is also rejected by most Reconstructionist Jews, but for a different reason. Most posit that God is not a being with a will, Thus, they maintain that no will can be revealed. The origin of the Torah. The Torah is composed of 5 books called in English Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. They chronicle the history of the Hebrews and also contain the commandments that Jews are to follow. Rabbinic Judaism holds that the Torah extant today is the same one that was given to Moses by God on Mount Sinai. Maimonides explained, we do not know exactly how the Torah was transmitted to Moses, but when it was transmitted, Moses merely wrote it down like a secretary taking dictation. Thus, every verse in the Torah is equally holy, as they all originate from God and are all part of God's Torah, which is perfect, holy, and true. Haredi Jews generally believe that the Torah today is no different from what was received from God to Moses, with only the most minor or scribal errors. Many other Orthodox Jews suggest that over the millennia, some scribal errors have crept into the Torah's text. They note that the Masoretes, 7th to 10th century, compared all known Torah variations in order to create a definitive text. However, even according to this position, that the scrolls that Jews possess today are not letter perfect. The Torah scrolls are certain the word perfect texts, receptacles that was divinely revealed to Moses. Indeed, the general consensus of Orthodox rabbinic authority posits that belief in the word perfect nature of the Torah scroll is a defining feature of Orthodox Judaism. Although, even in modern Orthodox circles, there are some rabbis, Professor Mark Shapiro, that point out the numerous rabbinic sources from the Talmudic, post-Talmudic, and medieval ages that claim that there were some changes to the text, which include whole verses that were made deliberately during the Messianic era and even during the time of the First Temple. Professor Shapiro lists the many medieval rabbis discussed changes in addition that occurred during the time of Ezra the scribe in his work, The Limits of Orthodox Theology. Maimonides' 13 Principles reappraised. Prophecy. Jews believe that the Almighty Creator at times chooses to prophesy. Many of such occurrences are described in the Nevi'im, the books of the prophets. However, since the destruction of the first temple, prophets has ceased. Oral Torah. Orthodox Jews view the written and oral Torah as the same as Moses taught for all practical purposes. Conservative Jews tend to believe that much of the oral Torah is divinely inspired, while Reform and Reconstructionist Jews tend to view all of the oral law as an entirely human creation. Traditionally, the Reform movement held that Jews were obliged to obey the ethical but not the ritual commandments of Scripture. Although today, many Reformed Jews have adopted many traditional ritual practices. Karate Jews traditionally consider the written Torah to be authoritative, viewing the oral law as only one possible interpretation of the written Torah. Most modern Orthodox Jews will agree that while certain laws within the oral law were given to Moses, most of the Talmudic laws were derived organically by the rabbis of the Messianic and Talmudic eras. God's relationship with men. Judaism focuses more on how God defines men than one trying to define God. There is therefore a focus on what people are expected to be or do far more than on spelling out theological beliefs. People are born with both a tendency to do good and do evil. Jewish tradition most emphasizes free will, and most Jewish thinkers reject determinism on the basis that free will and the exercise of free choice have been considered a precondition of moral life. Moral indeterminacy seems to be assumed both by the Bible, which bids man to choose between good and evil, and by the rabbis, who hold the decision for following the good inclination rather than the evil rests with every individual. Maimonides asserted the compatibility of free will with foreknowledge of God. Only a handful of Jewish thinkers have expressed deterministic views. This group includes the medieval Jewish philosopher Hazdai Crescus in the 19th century Hasidic Rabbi Mordecai Yosef Leiner of Izbika. All is necessary for God because he is perfect, but for mankind all is possible by virtue of choice. The two types of view are true with knowing about the prophet, who is in divacut with God to be wise and to perform miracles for him. Judaism affirms that people are born with both a Yisr Hatov, an inclination or impulse to do good, and with a Yisr Hara, an inclination or impulse to do evil. These phrases reflect the concept that within each person there are opposing natures continuing in conflict, and are referenced many times in the rabbinic tradition. The rabbis even recognize a positive value to the Yisr Hara. Without the Yisr Hara, there will be no civilization or other fruits of human labor. Midrash states, without the evil inclination, no one will father a child, build a house, or make a career. The implication is that Yisr Hatov and Yisr Hara are best understood not only as moral categories of good and evil, but as an inherent conflict within man between selfish and selfish orientation. Between selfless and selfish orientation. Judaism recognizes two classes of sin: offenses against other people and offenses against God. Offenses against God may be understood as violation of a contract, the covenant between God and the children of Israel. Once a person has sinned, there are various means by which they may obtain atonement. See atonement in Judaism. Judaism rejects the belief in original sin. Both ancient and modern Judaism teach that every person is responsible for his own actions. The existence of some innate sinfulness on each human being was discussed in both biblical Genesis 8:21, Psalm 51:5, and post-biblical sources. However, in the biblical verses, this is brought as an argument for divine mercy, as humans cannot be blamed for the nature they were created with. Some apocryphal and pseudepigraphic sources express pessimism about human nature. A grain of evil seed was sown in Adam's heart from the beginning, and the Talmud of Buddha Zara has an unusual passage which Elwakis describes as the serpent seduced Eve in paradise and impregnated her with spiritual, physical dirt, which was inherited through the generation. But the revelation at Sinai and the reception of the Torah cleansed Israel. Kiesler states that although it is clear that belief in some form of original sin did exist in Judaism, it did not become mainstream teaching nor dogmatically fixed, but remained at the margins of Judaism. Reward and punishment. The mainstream Jewish view that God will reward those who observe his commandments and punish those who intentionally transgress them. Examples of rewards and punishment are described throughout the Bible and throughout classical rabbinic literature. The common understanding of this principle is accepted by most Orthodox and conservative and many Reformed Jews. It is generally rejected by the Reconstructionists. See also free will and theology. The Bible contains reference to Sheol, literal gloom, as the common destination of the dead, which may be compared with the Hades or underworld of ancient religion. In later tradition, this is interpreted either as hell or as a literary expression for death or the grave in general. According to a Gaddic passage in the Talmud, God judging who has followed his commandments and who does not, and to what extent. Those who do not pass the test go to a purifying place, sometimes referred to as Gehinnom, hell, but more analogous to the Christian purgatory, to learn their lesson. There is, however, for the most part, no eternal damnation. The vast majority of souls only go to that reforming place for a limited amount of time, less than 1 year. Certain categories are spoken of as having no part in the world to come, but this appears to mean annihilation rather than an eternity of torment. Philosophical rationalists such as Maimonides believed that God did not actually mete out rewards and punishment as such. In this view, these were beliefs that were necessary for the mass to believe in order to maintain a structured society and to encourage the observance of Judaism. However, once one learned Torah properly, one could then learn the higher truth. In this view, the nature of the reward is that if a person perfected his intellect to the highest degree, then the part of his intellect that connected to God, the active intellect, will be immortalized and enjoy the glory of the present for all eternity. The punishment would simply be that this will not happen. No part of one's intellect will be immortalized with God. See divine providence in Jewish thought. The Kabbalah, mystical tradition in Judaism, contains further elaboration, though some Jews do not consider these authoritative. For example, it admits the possibility of reincarnation, which is generally rejected by non-mystical Jewish theologians and philosophers. It also believes in a triple soul, of which the lowest level, nefesh or animal life, dissolves into the elements. The middle layer, ruach or intellect, goes to Gan Eden, paradise, while the highest level, neshama or spirit, seeks union with God. Some Jews consider tikkun olam, for repairing the world, as a fundamental motivating factor in Jewish ethics. Therefore, the concept of life after death, in the Jewish view, is not encouraged as the motivating factor in performance of Judaism. Indeed, it is held that one can attain closeness to God even in this world through moral and spiritual perfection. Israel, chosen for a purpose. Alright. God chose the Jewish people to be in a unique covenant with God. The description of this covenant is the Torah itself. God further declared in the Torah through prophecy to Moses that his firstborn is the Israelite. However, closeness and being chosen does not imply exclusivity, as anyone can join and convert. Included in the idea of being chosen is that Jews were chosen for a specific mission, a duty to be a light unto the nation, and to have a covenant with God described in the Torah. Rabbi Lord Emmanuel Jacobovitz, former chief rabbi of the United Synagogue of Great Britain, described the mainstream Jewish view on this issue. Yes, I do believe that the chosen people concept, as affirmed by Judaism in its holy writ, its prayers, and its millennial tradition. In fact, I believe that every people, and indeed in a more limited way every individual, is chosen or destined for some distinct purpose in advancing the designs of providence. Only some fulfill their mission and others do not. Maybe the Greeks were chosen for their unique contributions to art and philosophy. The Romans for their pioneering services in law and government. The British for bringing parliamentary rule into the world, and the Americans for piloting democracy in a pluralistic society. The Jews were chosen by God to be peculiar unto me as the pioneers of religion and morality. This was and is their national purpose. The Messiah. Judaism acknowledges an afterlife, but does not have a single or systemic way of thinking about the afterlife. Judaism places its overwhelming stress on Olam Hazeh, this world, rather than Olam Haba, the world to come. And speculations about the world to come are peripheral to mainstream Judaism. In Perki Avat, Ethics of the Fathers, It is said that 1 hour of penitence and good deeds in this world is better than all the life of the world to come. But 1 hour of spiritual repose in the world to come is better than all the life of this world, reflecting both a view of the significance of life on earth and the spiritual repose granted to the righteous in the next world. Jews reject the idea that Jesus of Nazareth was the Messiah and agree that the Messiah has not yet come. Throughout Jewish history, there have been a number of Jewish Messiah claimants considered false by Jews, including most notably Simon Bar Kokhba and Sabbatai Zevi, whose followers were known as Sabbateans. The 12 of Maimonides' 13 principles of faith was, I believe, with perfect faith in the coming of the Messiah, Mashiach, and though he may tarry, still I await him every day. Orthodox Jews believe that a future Jewish Messiah, the Mashiach, anointed one, will be a king who will rule the Jewish people independently and according to Jewish law. In the traditional view, the Messiah was understood to be a human descendant of King David, that is, the Davidic line. Liberal or Reformed Judaism does not believe in the arrival of a personal Messiah who will ingather the exile in the land of Israel and cause the physical resurrection of the dead. Rather, Reformed Jews focus on a future age in which there is a perfected world of justice and mercy. All right. So, Jewish principle of faith. Now, let's go over here to dualism in cosmology. Now we got Encyclopedia Britannica. And we got Wikipedia. All right, what time is it? All right. Since I'm on Wikipedia right now, I'm going to scroll down on Wikipedia. All right, see also footnotes, bibliography, external links. All right. So like I said, we're on Wikipedia, but we're going to click over here first to Britannica. Dualism in cosmology. What I'm going to do today, because of time, I'm going to go to some of this. Ain't nothing I ain't read before, but I'm going to go to some key points. Dualism in religion, the doctrine that the world or reality consists of two basic, opposed, and irreducible principles that account for all that exists. It has played an important role in the history of thought and of religion. The nature and significance. In religion, dualism means the belief in two supreme opposed powers of God, or sets of divine or demonic beings that cause the world to exist. It may conveniently be contrasted with monism, which sees the world as consisting of one principle, such as mind, spirit, or matter, with monotheism, or with various pluralism and polytheism. We see a multiplicity of principles or powers at work, as is indicated below. However, the situation is not always clear and simple, a matter of one or two or many, for there are monotheistic, monistic, and polytheistic religions with dualistic aspects. Various distinctions may be discerned in the types of dualism in general. In the first place, dualism may be either absolute or relative. In a radical or absolute dualism, the two principles are held to exist from eternity. For example, in the Iranian dualism of Zoroastrianism and Manichaeism, both the bright and beneficent and the sinister and destructive principles are from eternity. In a mitigated or relative dualism, one of the two principles may be derived from or presuppose the other as a basis. For example, the Bogomils, a medieval heretical Christian group, held that the devil is a fallen angel who came from God and was the creator of the human body, into which he managed by trickery to have God infuse a soul. Here the devil is a subordinate being and not co-eternal with God, the absolute eternal being. This then is clearly a qualified, not a radical dualism. Both radical and mitigated types of dualism are found among different groups of the late medieval Cathari, a Christian heretical movement closely related to the Bogomils. Another and perhaps more important distinction is that between dialectical and eschatological dualism. Dialectical dualism involves an eternal dialectic or tension of two opposed principles, such as in Western culture, the one and the many, or idea and matter, or space called by Plato the receptacle, and in Indian culture, Maya, the illusory world of sense experience and multiplicity, and Atman Brahman, the essential identity of self and ultimate reality. Dialectical dualism ordinarily implies a cyclical or eternally repetitive view of history. Eschatological dualism concerned with the ultimate destiny of humanity and the world, how things will be in the last time, on the other hand, conceives of a final resolution of the present dualistic state of things, in which evil will be eliminated at the end of a linear history, constituted of a series of unrepeatable events instead of a cyclical, repetitive one. The ancient Iranian religions, Zoroastrianism and Manichaeism and Gnosticism, a religio-philosophical movement influential in the Hellenistic world, provide examples of eschatological dualism, a type of thought, such as Platonism, that insists on a profound harmony in the cosmos, is thus more radically dualistic because of its irreducibly dialectical character than Zoroastrianism and Manichaeism, with their emphasis on the cosmic struggle between two antithetical principles, good and evil. Midway between these extremes is Gnostic dualism, which has an ontology or theory of being of an Orphic Platonic type, see below, among ancient civilizations and people, but which also affirms the final disappearance and annihilation of evil with the eventual destruction of the material world, and thus comprises both dialectical and eschatological dualism. In philosophy, dualism is often identified with the doctrine of transcendence, that there is a separate realm or above, or being above and beyond the world, as opposed to monism, which holds that the ultimate principle is inside the world, immanent. In the disciplines concerned with the study of religion, however, religious dualism refers not to the distinction or separation of God and the world, but to the doctrine of two basic principles, a doctrine that moreover may easily be compatible with a form of monism, Orphism, or the Advaita school of Vedanta, that makes the opposition between the one and the many absolute and sees in multiplicity merely a fragmentation or illusory obliteration of the one. Now, let me historical varieties of religious dualism. Let me first summarize here. Among ancient civilizations and peoples, you have Egypt and Mesopotamia. You have Greece and the Hellenistic world. You have Iran. Among South and East Asian religions, like over in India and China. Then you have among religions of the West, like Judaism, and Christianity. Then you have among religions of modern indigenous peoples. And that's people all over the world. So like I said, come back all the way up. So like I said, historical varieties of religious dualism among ancient civilizations and people. Dualism is a phenomenon of major importance in the religions of the ancient world. Those of the Middle East would be considered here Egypt and Mesopotamia. While there was generally no explicit dualism in ancient Egyptian religion, there was an implicit dualism in the contrast between the god Seth and the god Osiris. Seth, a violent, aggressive, foreign, sterile god connected with disorder, the desert, and loneliness, was opposed to Osiris, the god of fertility and light, active in the waters of the Nile. Seth also possessed some typically dualistic marks of a mythological character. His action as well as his personality itself was ambivalent, and as a typical trickster, he was also capable at times of constructive action in the cosmos. The myths of Osiris and Seth may be compared in various ways with those recently discovered among the Dogon people of the Western Sudan, which contrast Nomo, a fertile and happily mated primordial being pictured in fish form, with Urugu, pale fox, an unhappy, sterile character who lives in the wilderness without a mate. Urugu is considered to be the element that makes the universe complete. The same role assigned to Seth in the Egyptian myth. Dualism, broadly speaking, was also present in ancient Mesopotamian religion. In myths pertaining to the origin of the gods and of the cosmos, the opposition between the primordial deities, Apsu, the abyss, and Tiamat, the sea, and the new ones, particularly Marduk, the demiurge or creator, displayed some dualistic aspect. Though the earlier deities had established the basic reality of the universe is ontological core, because of their chaotic and selfish nature, they resisted their own offspring who were later to create the non-existing definite order of the cosmos, a dualism of the ontological, basic reality or being, versus the cosmological. The form or order of the material universe is thus implicitly affirmed. Then you have Greece and the Hellenistic world. What time is it? Okay. I'm gonna go a little fast here. And then you have, like I said, Iran, talking about Zoroastrianism, and then you have South and East Asian religions in India and in China. And then you go to among the religions of the West, Judaism. No real dualism is found in Judaism except in the Gnostic and theosophic forms of Jewish mysticism known as Kabbalah. The presence of a vigorous and universal monotheism implied not only faith in a single creative God, but also faith in a God who is the uncontested master of history. And neither Satan nor Belial detracts from this absolute monotheism. Within these limitations, however, a tendency toward dualistic thought can be seen in such late non-canonical texts as the first book of Enoch, 1st century BCE, in which certain angels are said to have fallen as a consequence of their wedding with the daughters of human beings. These angels, it is held, taught humans the malevolent arts of magic, seduction, and violence, together with such elements of culture as writing and use of metal. Though there is no dualism in the proper sense in the manual discipline, one of the Qumran texts of the Dead Sea Scrolls, a certain polarity is nonetheless displayed in a passage that asserts of God that He created man to have dominion over the world and made for him two spirits, so that he may walk by them until the time of his visitation. They are the spirits of truth and error. In the dwelling of light are the origins of the truth, and from a spring of darkness are the origins of error. In the hand of the Prince of Lights is dominion over all the children of righteousness. In the ways of light they walk, and in the hand of the angel of darkness is all dominion over the children of error. And in the ways of darkness they walk. And then when it comes to Christianity, of course, dualistic concepts appear principally in its Gnostic developments, but even in the 2nd century Judaizing sects of the Encratites, which was not really Gnostic, there were dualistic aspects that had modified some tendencies of later Judaism. These teachers were also particularly prominent in the writings of the supporters of Docetism, the doctrine that Christ being divine did not suffer and die. 2nd century, who held that matter is essential evil and that the soul is a pre-existing substance. Conceptions of a similar type are also found in the psalm or hymn of the Nessim. Nessim is the Hebrew term for Ophite, mentioned above, and in the Song of the Pearl in the Gnostic Acts of Tongues. Here also occurs the concept of a Savior to be saved who has been sent from above and was made a prisoner by dark. This basic concept was developed fully only in Manichaeism. The Gnostic dualism view survived in late antiquity and into the Middle Ages, both in the East among the Mandeans, the Yazidi, and some extreme sects within the Shiite branch of Islam, and in the West among the Bogomils and Cathari. Is still present today in modern theosophy. And like I say, among religions of modern indigenous peoples, like North American Indians, and among Paleo-Siberians and people of that nature. All right. Let me click over here to Wikipedia. Dualism in cosmology. Dualism or dualistic cosmology is the moral or belief that two fundamental concepts exist which often oppose each other. It is an umbrella term that covers a diversity of views from various religions, including both traditional religions and scriptural religions. Now, moral dualism is the belief of the great complement of or conflict between the benevolent and the malevolent. It simply implies that there are two moral opposites at work, independent of any interpretation of what might be moral and independent of how these may be represented. Moral opposites might, for example, exist in a worldview that has one God, more than one God, or none. By contrast, duotheism, bitheism, or ditheism implies at least two gods, while bitheism implies harmony, ditheism implies rivalry and opposition, such as between good and evil, or light and dark, or summer and winter. For example, a ditheistic system could be one in which one God is a creator and the other a destroyer. In theology, dualism can also refer to the relationship between the deity and the creation, or the deity and the universe. See theistic dualism. That form of dualism is a belief shared in certain traditions of Christianity and Hinduism. Alternatively, in ontological dualism, the world is divided into two overarching categories. Within Chinese culture and philosophy, the opposition and combination of the universe's two basic principles are expressed as yin and yang and are traditionally foundational doctrine of Taoism, Confucianism, and some Chinese Buddhist schools. Now, when you're talking about bitheism and ditheism, imply belief in two equally powerful gods with complementary or autonomous properties. However, while bitheism implies harmony, ditheism implies rivalry and opposition, such as between good and evil, bright and dark, or summer and winter. For example, a ditheism system would be one in which one God is created, the other is destructive. In the original concepts of rationalism, for example, Ahura Mazda was the spirit of ultimate good, while Ahriman Angra Mainyu was the spirit of ultimate evil. In a bitheistic system, by contrast, where two deities are not in conflict or opposite, one could be male and the other female. Duotheism. One well-known example of a bitheistic or duotheistic theology based on gender polarity is found in the neo-pagan religion of Wicca. In Wicca, dualism is representing the belief of a god and a goddess as a dual partnership in ruling the universe. This is centered on the worship of a divine couple, the moon goddess and the horn god, who are regarded as lovers. However, there is also a ditheistic theme within traditional Wicca, as the horn god has dual aspects of bright and dark, relating to day and night, summer and winter, expressed as the Oak King and the Holy King, who in Wiccan myth and ritual are said to engage in battle twice a year for the hand of the god, resulting in the change in seasons. Within Wicca, bright and dark do not correspond to notions of good and evil, but are aspects of the natural world, much like yin and yang in Taoism. Radical and mitigated dualism. Radical or absolute dualism, which posits two co-equal divine forces, conceives of two previously coexisting realms of light and dark, which become embroiled in conflict owing to the chaotic actions of the latter. Subsequently, certain elements of the light became entrapped within darkness. The purpose of material creation is to enact the slow process of extraction of these individual elements, at the end of which the kingdom of light will prevail over darkness. Now, mitigated dualism is where one of the two principles is in some way inferior to the other. Such classical Gnostic movements as the Sethians conceive of the material world as being created by a lesser divinity than the true God that was the object of their devotion. The spiritual world is conceived of as being radically different from the material world, coextensive with the true God and the true home of certain enlightened members of humanity. Thus, these systems were expressive of a feeling of acute alienation within the world, and their resulting aim was to allow the soul to escape the constraints presented by the physical realm. All right. Theistic dualism. In theology, dualism can refer to the relationship between God and creation, or God and the universe. This form of dualism is a belief shared in certain traditions of Christianity and Hinduism. All right. In Christianity, the dualism between God and creation has existed as a central belief in multiple historical sets. And traditions of Christianity include Marcionism, Catharism, Paulicianism, and other forms of Gnostic Christianity. Christian dualism refers to the belief that God and creation are distinct, but interrelated through an indivisible bond. However, Gnosticism is a diverse, syncretistic religious movement consisting of various belief systems generally united in a belief in the distinction between a supreme transcendent God and a blind, evil demiurge responsible for creating the material universe, thereby trapping the divine spark within matter. Gnosticism is not limited to Christianity. It also incorporates beliefs from other Abrahamic traditions, such as early Jewish sects. All right, let me click on this syncretism is the practice of combining different beliefs in various schools of thought. Syncretism involves the merging or assimilation of several originally discrete traditions, especially in the theology and mythology of religion, thus asserting an underlying unity and allowing for an inclusive approach to other faiths, while syncretism in art and culture is sometimes likened to eclecticism. In the realm of religion, it specifically denotes a more integrated merging of beliefs into a unified system, distinct from eclecticism, which implies a selective adoption of elements from different traditions without necessarily blending them into a new cohesive belief system. Syncretism also manifests in politics, known as syncretic politics. All right, let me scroll down to religious syncretism. Religious syncretism is the blending of two or more religious belief systems into a new system, or the incorporation into a religious tradition of beliefs from unrelated traditions. This can occur for many reasons, and the latter scenario happens quite commonly in areas where multiple religious traditions exist in proximity and function actively in a culture, or when a culture is conquered and the conquerors bring their religious beliefs with them, but do not succeed in entirely eradicating the old beliefs or especially practice. Religions may have syncretic elements to their beliefs or history, but adherents of soul labor systems often frown on applying the label, especially adherents who belong to revealed religious systems, such as the Abrahamic religion, or any system that exhibits an exclusivist approach. Such adherents sometimes see syncretism as a betrayal of their pure faith. By this reasoning, adding an incompatible belief corrupts the original religion, rendering it no longer true. Indeed, critics of a syncretistic trend may use the word or its variants as a disparaging epithet, as a charge, implying that those who seek to incorporate a new view, belief, or practice into a religious system pervert the original truth, original faith. Non-exclusivist systems of belief, on the other hand, may feel quite free to incorporate other traditions into their own. So that's syncretism. All right, let me click back. All right, so we're on theistic dualism and Christianity. Now, the tolerance of dualism ranges widely among the different Christian traditions. As a monotheistic religion, the conflict between dualism and monism has existed in Christianity since its inception. The 1912 Catholic Encyclopedia described that in the Catholic Church, the dualistic hypothesis of an eternal world existing side by side with God was, of course, rejected by the 13th century. But mind-body dualism was not. The problem of evil is difficult to reconcile with absolute monism and has prompted some Christian sects to veer towards dualism. Gnostic forms of Christianity were more dualistic. And some Gnostic traditions posited that the devil was separate from God as an independent deity. The Christian dualists of the Byzantine Empire, the Paulicians, were seen as Manichaean heretics by Byzantine theologians. this tradition of Christian dualism founded by Constantine Sylvanus argued that the universe was created through evil and separate from a moral God. And then you have ontological dualism. Alternatively, dualism can mean the tendency of humans to perceive and understand the world as being divided into two overarching categories. In this sense, it is dualistic when one perceives a tree as a thing separate from everything surrounding it. This form of ontological dualism exists in Taoism and Confucianism, and a foundational theory within traditional Chinese medicine believes that divide the universe into the complementary opposition of yin and yang. In traditions such as classical Hinduism, Samkhya, Yoga, Vaishakya, and the later Vedanta schools, which accepted the theory of gunas, Chinese Pure Land and Zen Buddhism, or Islamic Sufism, a key to enlightenment is transcending this sort of dualistic thinking without merely substituting dualism with monism or pluralism. Alright? And then you have in other religions like the Samoyed peoples, the Nenets myth, comparative studies of Keats, studies of Keats and neighboring peoples. Then you got all these Samoyed peoples and Uralic languages, the Chukchi, and the Fujians. You know, let me click over to the mind-body dualism before I end today's video. In the philosophy of mind-body dualism denotes either the view that mental phenomena are non-physical, or that the mind and body are distinct and separate. Thus, it encompasses a set of views about the relationship between mind and matter, as well as between subject and object, and is contrasted with other positions such as physicalism and activism in the mind-body problem. Now, dualism is closely associated with the thought of René Descartes, 1641, who holds that the mind is a non-physical and therefore non-spatial substance. Descartes clearly identified the mind with consciousness and self-awareness and distinguished this from the physical brain as the seat of intelligence. Hence, he was the first documented Western philosopher to formulate the mind-body problem in the form in which it exists today. However, the theory of substance, dualism, has many advocates in contemporary philosophy such as Richard Swinburne, William Haskell, J.P. Moreland, E.J. Lowe, Charles Taylor Farrow, Sayed Jabbar, Musa Virad, and John Foster. Dualism is contrasted with various kinds of monism. Substance dualism is contrasted with all forms of materialism, but property dualism may be considered a form of emergent materialism or non-reductive physicalism in some sense. Now you have types. Ontological dualism makes dual commitments about the nature of existence as it relates to mind and matter. It can be divided into three different types. Substance dualism asserts that mind and matter are fundamentally distinct kinds of foundation. Property dualism suggests that the ontological distinction lies in the differences between properties of mind and matter, as in emergentism. Predicate dualism claims the irreducibility of mental predicates to physical predicates. So, we're going to come back and we're going to stay on top of this. We're going to stay on top of this. Because there's always some points to be made. But one thing for sure, Lord, stone disciple. See, you can't lie. You can't lie. And when you try to lie, it may have took a little time, but Lord Stone disciple got time. Got time. See, that's the reason why it's important when we talking about the names of God. We talking about when we be reading over all these versions of the Holy Bible. BibleStudy2.com, BibleGateway.com. All available versions of the Bible, of the Holy Bible. It is being translated in all these various languages all over the world. Old Testament, Judaism. And see, that's another thing about the Dead Sea Scrolls. See, the Dead Sea Scrolls go all the way back 1,000-some years before all that. We talking about back in BCE. See, this is before anybody said anything about no Gnostic. You had the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is how old these Dead Sea Scrolls is. So when you talk about the Old Testament, and you talk about the names of God, and then here we are talking about dualism and cosmology. And see, and then you got BibleStudy2.com, Bible Gateway, and then we get into the names of God. See that Old Testament names of God. Then you come into the New Testament names of God. And then we were talking about the Tetragrammaton, which is sacred. It's so sacred that the Jews won't even pronounce it, won't even say anything about it. You know, in religious service, they'll have a substitute, Adonai. They won't even say Jehovah. And then that's the same, you know, where that Jehovah came from. But to the Jews, you say Yahweh, you say Jehovah. In Jewish faith, Yahweh and Jehovah are sacred. It's so sacred that they won't even pronounce it. They'll have an alternative term like Elohim or Adonai. Even in the prayer, Hashem, they'll say that. But it's so sacred, the Tetragrammaton, that the whole Jewish faith, they won't even, you know. Look, I'm going to get ready to end today's video. My name is Eric D. Johnson, also on BrightShine, right here in the city of Memphis, in the county, State of Tennessee. Thank all my family, my support for your continued encouragement and support. Always give thanks, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, Son of God. Thank for all the blessing and the guidance that He provides us all with. And continue to pray for peace. All around the world, there are wars being fought. There are wars being fought. And then also in that, you have all these natural disasters because, you know, the elements and things, the changing seasons. People need prayer, man. They need prayer. And so, I'm going to get ready to end today's video. I'm going to come back on my next video and go continue. We're going to stay on this. And till next time, take care of yourself. Wish each and every one of you the very best. And also, don't forget, that here in the United States of America, don't forget, we got an upcoming election coming up. Irregardless of your party affiliation, whatever, or whatever. Exercise your right to vote. Exercise your right to vote. Cast your vote in this coming election. Federal election, state election, and local election. Exercise your constitutional right to vote. You know, you got the right to vote. or not to vote, but vote, because that gives you a voice. That gives you a voice in the government. So until next time, take care of yourself. We see you more very, very